She's still laughing.
That's so funny. Welcome to 5 Lemons Left. We're the real stuff, the lemons making lemonade. So pucker up, because we're going to be discussing our life's lessons and the nitty-gritty details of our spiritual journeys.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Drusilla.
I'm Melissa.
Hello, this is Morgan.
And I'm Penny. Welcome to our podcast today. Okay, start that one over. What?
I love starting this podcast off with laughter, even if we don't know why we're laughing.
What?
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. In case you're new here, we're 5 Lemons Laughing, and each week on our podcast, we dive into our spiritual journey, and we share our personal experiences of applying spiritual principles to our daily lives. This year we're talking about, or this episode, we are talking about undoing generational stuff in our lives. So, like, what did you learn from your parents? What did they learn from their parents, grandparents? And going back, what unhealthy habits are we bringing forward that we don't even know about? And we're going to start with a fun story first. So, Morgan, I'm going to have you start.
Okay. All right. Well, so my mother cooks a lot the same as my grandmother. She cooks a lot of her same recipes, and she was making some spaghetti sauce, some homemade spaghetti sauce, according to my grandmother's recipe. And, you know, from looking around on Pinterest and all these other different recipe websites, she noticed that her spaghetti sauce recipe, how she's been making it for the past 40 years, had a lot more water in it than the other recipes she was seeing online. And it got her wheels turning, and she started to wonder, like, why that would be. And she realized that her mother was probably watering down the spaghetti sauce so that it would stretch further and feed more mouths. And my mother never questioned the recipe or adapted it. She just kept making it the same way. So she wasn't able to confirm that was the reason, because my grandmother had already passed away when Mom had this insight. But I just thought that was so funny that we just keep doing things the same old way without questioning its usefulness or, application in our lives. So anyway, I just thought that was funny. And Penny had another similar funny story that she was going to share with us.
Yeah, this is one that I just picked up in some training classes, and it's about the ham and how a woman was preparing it, and her husband asked her, she was making a Easter ham and she was cutting the ends off of the ham. And her husband said, honey, why are you cutting the ends off of that ham? And she goes, because that's the way my mother always did it. And her mother happened to be coming over for Easter that day. And so he said, well, I'm going to ask her why. And he asked her why. And she said, well, gosh, that's a really good question. I did it because my mother cut off the ends of the ham. And so Grandma happened to be coming over that day too. And so when Grandma arrived, the husband said, Grandma, I'm so curious. We're making ham today. Your granddaughter cut the ends off. Your daughter cuts the ends off. And I'm really curious, why are you cutting the ends off the ham? Does it make it taste better? Is it juicier? What is the reason? And Grandma looked at him and kind of chuckled and said, because I never had a pan that the ham fit in. And so I had to cut them off. And so it's just we do so many things because that's the way we were taught to do it. I mean, we do it at work, we do it with our families, we do it any organization. It's like everybody always says, well, that's the way we do it, right? And so I'm going to teach you how the way we do it. And nobody really ever questions why we do it that way. So yeah, pretty fascinating. And the thin spaghetti is pretty, it's really fascinating when we think about the generational history behind that spaghetti sauce and that ham. It's really fascinating.
It really is.
My brother does a lot of genealogy research too, and he was up in Salt Lake City at the Mormon Church, or the Church of Latter-day Saints has a big research facility up there that you can do all this family history. And they have this board, and it tells you if anybody in the library is related to you, because you sign in. And so it tells you, oh, this fourth cousin, her name is such and such, is in the library with you. And so that note came up. He went to look at the board, and he saw that this woman was in the library. He'd never met her. I mean, fourth cousin's pretty far removed. And so he just happened to find her in the library. And she was telling a story about her great-grandmother. Her great-grandmother's mother had passed away or something like that. And her great-grandfather couldn't take care of her. So he pawned them off on somebody else. And the grandma wasn't the pretty one, or her great-grandma wasn't the pretty one. So she was kind of abused and neglected compared to her sister. And this woman now is, I don't know, in her 50s, maybe 60. And this was her great-grandmother, had all this pain. And this woman sat there and sobbed about it to my brother, because she could still feel her great-grandma's pain. Mm-hmm. So that's like generational pain that just keeps passed down. So that story must have been just kept alive in their cells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real.
So she was feeling the pain of what? Not being the pretty one?
The abuse, the neglect, the not feeling like she mattered, not feeling like anybody loved her. I can't remember exactly all the statements that my brother told me, but she just felt it still in her cells, the pain of her great grandma.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a story that relates to that. And I may have told it to you all before, but so back maybe a couple of years into my marriage, my husband and I were going to counseling, or we were going to start going. And so I went through the yellow pages back then.
Yeah.
Way back then.
Way back then.
We're not going to say your age or anything, though.
Yeah.
You got on your rotary phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And had your Rolodex. You wrote it in your Rolodex, so you can keep it.
And I looked him up on MapQuest, so I could get
Oh my gosh.
all of those things are true. But I searched really hard to find someone that in the description of their services in the pages said that they had some spiritual background, right? And that it was a male, because I knew my husband probably wasn't going to listen if it were a female, right? So I found this person. And so we went there and we sat in. We went in and sat down, and he says to us, so tell me why you're here. And so my husband says, well, I'll let her start. And so I started telling him some stories about our marriage. And then he's just sitting there looking at me, and he's just like a very disheveled kind of person, in which I was surprised when we got there. Like, he looked like what I didn't imagine, like kind of threw me off. And I was like, he looks a little unorganized or disheveled or something. But he just stared at me and he said, no, I mean, tell me really why you're here. And I just felt myself fill up with emotion. And then I looked at my husband and said to him emphatically, because I do not trust you with my heart. And I didn't even know where that came from, right? And so this therapist sat there and he started moving around in his chair and started wiping like sweat off of his forehead. And he was obviously having some type of visceral reaction to what I said. And then he looked at me and he said, that was 5 generations that just came out of your mouth.
Wow.
Oh,
Yes. He said that to me and I just released. I just felt like I knew it. It was like what he said never surprised me, but it never entered my mind, you know? But what it was is that the women in our family have never trusted men. And, you know, knowing what we know in our spiritual journeys, not to trust your brother is not to trust God. So when I first came into this ministry, and I don't even know what it was that Jennifer picked up on, the first thing she said to me was, you need to read the development of trust chapter. She said, read it every day for 6 weeks. And I'll tell you, that's been the most therapeutic thing for me, you know, but yeah, when you all decided to talk about this topic, that story just came to me. I said, that's what it was. Been carrying around five generations of not trusting your partner.
Well, and I've also heard that our uteruses are connected too. So my uterus is connected to my mother's, to her mother's, to her mother's, to her mother's. So yeah, we carry all of that goes on in the uteruses too with us.
So Drusilla,
Melissa.
you mentioned the development of trust. Can you or any of us that's in A Course in Miracles, and it's development of trust. Go through the stages, just kind of give a little crib note of what the process of the development of trust is.
Well, it's really complicated. I think it's actually like maybe 6 steps or something. But it's where you're making a decision to surrender your feelings or your thought about a certain situation, person, your body, release an attachment. In that you do that, and then you reset yourself, meaning you're not able to move forward. You might stay in a position of, uncertainty about where you are, and everything seems off course. Like, for example, though I may have experienced that situation with my husband, gone through therapy and decided, oh, I need to really work on my level of trust and not so much focus on him. Well, I could get to that part. That doesn't mean that that's going to change the dynamics of the relationship, because there needs to be some stabilization going on. And what happens during that time is period of uncertainty. So then you go through the period of uncertainty, and then you go back to putting emphasis on developing your trust again, and trusting by relinquishing, by, let's say I decide when my husband go out, to kind of go back to your story, Morgan, that I don't call him and check in on him. So each time I'm doing that, I'm developing more and more trust. And then I go back to a phase of uncertainty, because what you're doing during the phase of uncertainty is kind of expanding that issue to be all encompassing. Because what it really means is that I don't trust God. I don't trust the universe. So it becomes this expansion, and you kind of have to be able to wrap your brain, your consciousness around all of that. So it's a pretty long process. And I will say that first year when I did it, my husband ended up writing me a letter of commitment. Was just like, yes, it was like the most beautiful letter. He's never written a letter before, but it was this most beautiful letter I ever read. Was just this most amazing journey I could actually pinpoint and see and talk about.
Thank you for giving a little description of that for people that aren't familiar with the Course in Miracles. Melissa, I think I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No, you didn't. No, I think, Drusilla, your story is really a good example of how we take on things in our family. Like, I'm sure they could have said, don't trust men to you.
Of course.
Right. Or it could have just been like this. You observed your mother darting and maneuvering certain things, or your grandmother, or, who learned from her grandmother to dart and maneuver. And I think that's how we learn those behaviors. Usually it's not just something someone says to us. It's usually us observing how things operate in our families. And then, we pick them up. And I think when you're a kid, you just don't question things until you start being exposed to other families and other ways of being. This just is your reality. And I think that, like, for me, these behaviors were in my family as well. And it was around fear-based things. Like, this is how we maneuver things that scare us and that could take our safety away. So, and you don't realize there's other ways of doing it, and plus we trust our parents and we trust our grandparents for the most part, So these are things that are just handed down. And like in my life, certain things just stopped working for me. Like, how am I supposed to have a really successful marriage if I don't trust men?
Right.
Because I've had the same issue in my family. So, I had to figure that out. That was a limiting belief that I just wasn't willing to, that didn't work in my life with a husband.
Mm-hmm. You know what this makes me think of? Somebody referenced Rolodex at the beginning when Drusilla started telling her story. Well, I just looked up Rolodex's website and they're still doing the same thing. They haven't evolved. They haven't grown. They haven't shifted gears. They're still selling the same product. And I imagine they're probably not very successful. They've become obsolete.
Yes.
Who evolve with the times are the ones that make it and thrive and grow. And the same happens to us if we are not able to meet the world and grow and change and evolve with it. If we keep doing the things that our grandparents and great grandparents did, then we won't survive or thrive in this world as it is currently. So I just thought that was a fun little metaphor.
Yes.
But yes, Rolodex is still around, believe it or not. I imagine their earnings are down quite significantly from the time when you made your appointment with the therapist all those years ago, Drusilla.
And you know what's so funny? I bet there's some people out there that have no idea what a Rolodex is.
Oh, yeah.
Look it up.
Listening, please comment somewhere if you don't know what it is, just for S's and G's, because I'm super curious.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
have you all heard the new topic of epigenetics?
I don't even know
what it means.
This is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the example that I heard recently was that the researchers took mice and they gave them a scent, and then they shocked them every time they smelled the scent. They would shock them, and then 3 generations later, when their third generation down, mice smell that scent, they would have a reaction of fear.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yes.
They say there's a piece
amazing
in
is
our
that.
grandmother's uteruses. Like, before we're ever born or even conceived, there is a piece of us in our grandmother's uteruses.
Mm-hmm.
What? I got Penny when she was talking about it, like moving forward, but going backwards?
Yes.
So interesting.
It didn't evolve with Morgan and then show up in the grave of her grandmother. It started with her grandmother.
Yeah. Okay.
And got passed down. Yes.
Okay.
Am I over-explaining?
No, you're not. No, I just missed something. Like, I understood what Penny said, but not what Morgan said.
Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to circle back to epigenetics because Drusilla, one of my favorite books is The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I almost forgot that. And he did a lot of research. He was an MD. He taught medical school. And he did a lot of research on beliefs and how they happen and how we can change our beliefs. And it's all, our brains are, we always heard and learned when I was younger that your brain is stuck. Wherever you're at, that's where you're at. But it's not true. Our brains are very malleable and they can change. And even they say you can even change your DNA. Your epigenetics is basically. And so it is really fascinating that we can break these generational patterns that have been handed down. And I'm in line to do that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I really liked about, or what I do like about the spiritual path and how Jennifer explains it in the Course in Miracles and the whole concept of the one mind. As I say yes to healing, I'm not just healing myself and those around me, but healing throughout all dimensions of time and space. I would like to shift gears a little bit and talk about racism, because I learned that from my family. When I was in elementary school, I would visit my dad in the summer times, and then, his mom and dad. And I remember telling my grandma, asking me about boys or whatever. And I'm like, yes, I have a boyfriend. And we talked a little bit more. And it just came out that he was a little black boy. And I didn't think anything about it, right? And I viscerally remember my grandmother's reaction to that. It was like, and that, I don't even know, I'm not going to try to justify that or, whatever it is. Just in this story, I remember it from elementary school. Not even thinking anything about color until my grandmother's reaction. And she said to me, it's okay to have Black friends, but it's not okay to date Black boys or marry them or whatever. And how that stuck with me. And then on my mom's side, like it was just an undercurrent, like certain comments, certain use of certain words about the people that lived down the street, right? It wasn't overtly, racist, but it was, the tone of it was, it's not okay to mix together. And that, I'm happy to say that I feel like that cycle is starting to break. And I believe it's starting to break culturally too. So not to go down a heavy street here, but that's, I wasn't even planning on talking about that. And then it just popped into my head that I learned that from my people, from my family. So right. Yeah, that was kind of a hard left turn. So here we are going down.
But it's very applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah. If your grandmother had dated a Black person back when she was the same age that you were at the time, what do you think the consequences of that would have been for her in that society?
Wow. So that would have been 100-ish years ago, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, 100 years ago. So that would have been, I don't know, 1920s, 1900s. I think that would have been frowned upon. I really think there would have
Yeah.
been big consequences.
Yeah. Probably illegal, actually.
Yeah, I bet it was illegal.
Mhm.
Which is just unbelievable to think about.
It is unbelievable to think about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So her belief that she projected onto you seems unloving, and like we would judge it as something wrong with it, but really it's coming probably from a place of fear.
Oh, it absolutely was fear. It was absolutely fear. Because I can
But
remember.
she never questioned it.
Yeah.
Like even the times had changed.
Yeah.
Fear and ignorance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I will put this in perspective too, that, and not saying that it was right. I'm not saying that it was right at all. And when I just started my period and my grandmother's around, she asked me, like, we can go to the store, you need to get a belt and like all of that. So it was just a completely different generation. That is definitely something that got brought forward.
Did you get the belt and all the stuff then?
No.
Just curious.
No, but the pads that she got me were no bueno, like those were big blocks of not rightness. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna veer off even in a stranger area. So, okay, and then so this is what I don't understand about people who are fighting being woke. Like, isn't woke the opposite of asleep? And isn't it like not ignorant and not continuing these things? I think it's politicized, but like, I'm really happy I'm woke. And I'm continue to wake up. I'm really happy that that certain behaviors of my family and with racism or cultural divisions or whatever, that they're coming to light, we know, like, don't you know, if you know better, you do better. And people are fighting doing better and knowing better. And it really bothers me. Like, I just really am like, why, like, why are we regressing here in this country? Why are we making being asleep okay?
Yeah.
And ignorant is okay. It's not. We know better. I don't know. That's my taking it off another path, but
I would say it's still on the path, right? Because somewhere that they're holding on to generational stereotypes, they're holding on to generational
fear.
Yeah.
Fear.
Fear. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, that's what it is. Fear.
Yeah.
Sure.
And as if I'm woke, they want to hold this power. Like, if we all are woke, somebody's going to lose power. And I don't know if that's true. I hope that we all wake up and do better. I don't know. But it is continuing these limiting beliefs, making it okay to not do better. Like, I think that's what we're talking about, our generational beliefs that we realize, oh, this really doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, there's that quote about the truth goes through 3 stages before it is recognized. And hold on, I have to read it.
Yeah.
The first, it is ridiculed. And the second, it is opposed. In the third, it is regarded as self-evident. So,
Ooh, I love that.
I mean, it's okay. So in the first phase, it is ridiculed. The truth is ridiculed. In the second, it is opposed. I've heard it said it is violently opposed or something like that. In the third, it is regarded as self-evident. So it's just like, when someone first hypothesized that the earth was round instead of flat, or that the sun was at the center of the galaxy and not the earth. I mean, people do not like having to question if they're right or not. Or, for me, I love when I have a turning point and I can see like, oh, I'm changing my mind about this right here and right now. Here's my change point. Like, I think that's a experience, but a lot of people are very uncomfortable with admitting that maybe they didn't have all of the information and they'd like to make a new choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from, Morgan? I've never heard that before.
Me either.
I had heard it before, and I just Googled the truth goes through 3 stages because I remembered that part. Mm-hmm. And let's see if I can find who said it.
And while you're looking for that, Morgan, I just want to interject too that when we keep doing things the way that's always been done, we limit ourselves from opportunities to expansion. Did somebody say expansion today? Did you, Drusilla? Somebody said it. I heard it someplace somewhere
part today. Of the development of trust. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, that's one of the things I think that people fear too, is that, somebody's going to come in and question the way they've done things. And then all of our self-limiting beliefs come into play because somebody's asking, why do we do it that way? And why is maybe not the best word to use. It always puts people on the defensive. So right. I've learned that a better word is like, what has you doing it this way? Or help me understand why you do it this way, or something like that, because then people are more willing to share, I guess, the reasons why they do it.
So has anyone had experience of really changing behavior, generational behavior in your family? And what was your family's response?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
I'm
not a lot then. You go, Ben.
Do you have one to share, Morgan? Go for it.
They've already been shared here on other episodes, so you share.
So when I got out of high school, I wanted to leave my small little town of Towner, North Dakota, 800 people. And I was just rip-roaring ready to go to college, and my dad said he wouldn't really pay for it and all this stuff. I think I've shared this before, that the MRS was my degree that I was going to get, the Mrs. degree, just get married and not use it, He never said that, but that's kind of but anyway, so I moved. I mean, my older sister moved to California, and then I followed her after I graduated from college and stuff. But so we moved into this house that was really quite beautiful. And we still live in it. We've been in it for 27 years. And when my mother came, she couldn't even fathom living in a house like that. Because we grew up in a house that was 50 years old when we moved into it. And then it burned down and we moved into a trailer house. And so we just housing wasn't a big deal for us in North Dakota. I always yearned for other people's homes that were really nice, but it was just like, it just wasn't part of our family to have, other siblings have really nice houses now too. But I just remember when my mom came out first and saw our house, it was just like, holy buckets. Like she couldn't even fathom having a house like that. And like our monthly payments was as much money as she made, or not in the house, but just all of our payments, because we own a company too, but was as much as she made in a year, in a month. And so it was just like breaking that generational pattern of lack and limitation, though it's not completely broken in my experience in this lifetime, but it's better than it was. So I don't know if that's for me, one that I have experienced.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And a friend, when they got the postcard, because my sister took a picture from our in our backyard up to our house. It's a really cool design. A friend got the postcard and she thought, oh, what resort's like trying to get my business now? And then she turned it over and she saw it was my house. And she went, oh my God, it's Penny's house.
So funny.
Wow.
Yeah. I just love that story. I'm so happy she shared that with me because I thought that was a really cool story.
Wow.
You'll all have to come see it someday.
Yes.
Little retreat at Penny's Resort.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I have a story to tell that sort of goes with the topic. It's not a generational thing, but it goes with like the whole unquestioned things and the ways that we're influenced. And so the other day I was driving about an hour from here, and I drive a 1994 Mitsubishi Montero. That's a manual shift, and there's no working speedometer. And I just realized that I just feel how fast to go. And before, I always thought I'm such a rebel because I always go 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit. But how much of a rebel is that? It's still dictated by the speed limit sign. It still is influenced by how fast people around me are going and people who are passing me or riding me on the tail. None of that comes into play now that I don't have a speedometer. Pass me all you want. I don't care. This is my speed. This is what feels right for me. And it sounds so simple, but I just had this major aha that like we are influenced constantly and we do not make our own choices. We may think that we have free will and that we're exercising free will by making these little choices, like I'm going to choose to go 5 miles over the speed limit, but it still is guided by and dictated by that speed limit. And like, it goes back to what I shared on another episode about just habitually drinking my morning tea without questioning if this is the highest and best thing in this moment. Like we just go through our day, allowing ourselves to be influenced constantly without really tuning in to what is right for us in this moment. And like, I can't tell you how many times I've flown down the highway at 80 miles per hour because that's how fast I go on the highway, even when it didn't feel safe, even when it felt like this is too fast for right now. Like this is what I do. I go 80 miles per hour on the highway or interstate, I should say. Anyway, so that was just my epiphany that I had this week.
I think that's a spiritual awakening, Morgan, when you can just go with your speed. Because I've been trying like hell to go the speed limit and I can't. I cannot do it.
If I'm going the speed limit, if I'm going under the speed limit, if I'm going over the speed limit, I have no idea and I don't care.
Well, I think it's a great story too. Like your intuition, you're following your intuition. And I think that's how you can make safe changes in your life, right? That's how you can change your family story, your what's been handed down, like what feels comfortable about being woke or not. Like, what does your intuition say? What's your heart say to do?
Right.
Not what grandma says, not what the sign says, but yeah, really what it is for you. Because you're going to be led the right way.
Right.
If you sit in stillness or silence and really listen to what it is you need to do, you'll know what to do. And that will be the right thing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes me think of another story. I saw this on social media sometime. This guy played a trick on some people who were in a waiting room, and he planted people in the waiting room and he made this buzzer go off. And every time the buzzer went off, like 3 different people in the waiting room would stand up and then sit back down. And then people around them started following that same behavior, even though they had no idea why they were doing it. And it's just like, it's another testament to we don't question things. We just
That's
do what we
crazy.
think is expected of us. Anyway, I think, yes,
Oh.
it is more difficult than you might imagine to really separate yourself from all of that generational stuff, from all of the marketing and all of the politics and everything that is constantly in our face, and to go within and see what you really are guided to do.
Totally.
That sounds like the perfect place to wrap this up. We are just about out of time, and I'm super curious to what Penny's today.
You guys, well, this is all I came up with.
Evolve and glow and thrive.
Grow and thrive.
Yeah.
Grow. Yeah. I
love that.
was, yeah, thank you.
I feel like we opened so many cans here, like give us so many, like topic ideas for the fun conversation. Do we have any shout outs today?
I have to shout out to my son who doesn't listen. Thank gosh. I would rather my family not listen, but he's 20 today.
Oh, happy birthday day, Melissa.
He's so
And happy
handsome.
birthing day.
Yes.
Yes.
How was that delivery, Melissa?
Oh,
Sure.
God, forever. Took forever. And he had to, I was thinking that today. I was like, he's just done it on his own, like his own, beat to his own drum. He had to be vacuumed out and with, and we have great stories about his birth. And so, yeah, took forever.
Funny.
Well, I'm glad he's here.
Me too.
Yeah. And I wonder what generational traumas he's carrying around.
Oh, I've given him a lot. My husband said, we don't save for college, we save for therapy.
Good investment. Good investment.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If anybody was joining us for the first time, we referenced Jennifer Hadley and the Power of Love Ministry, which is where we all met each other. So we will put a link to that in our episode description. And thanks for your support. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we'll see you next week.
Woohoo!
Thanks.
It's a wrap.
Bye.